So let me ask you something. When you look at the person you're with, or the person you're considering being with, are you seeing who they actually are? Or are you seeing who you believe they could become? Because, to be honest, there's a massive difference between the two, and confusing them is costing you everything. You see the red flags, you know they're emotionally unavailable, you recognize they're not over their ex, you can see that they have unresolved trauma, you understand they're not ready for what you're offering, but you also see something else. You see potential, and that potential is more attractive to you than reality. That possibility is something more compelling than what's actually in front of you. So you stay, you invest, you believe, not in who they are, but in who they could become. And that's the trap. The first truth about the I can fix him or her delusion is this: you're not actually attracted to who they are. Not really. You're attracted to who you believe they could become. And that attraction to potential keeps you invested in a fantasy instead of actually dealing with reality. Here's what's actually happening when you're caught in the I can fix him or her pattern. Okay, so you meet someone, and yes, you see the red flags. You see that they're emotionally unavailable, that they're not over their ex, that they have unresolved trauma, that they're not ready for what you're offering, but you see also something else. You see potential. You see the glimpses of the person they could be if they just healed, if they just worked on themselves, if they just had the right support, the right love, the right person believing in them. You see moments where they're vulnerable, where they open up, where they show you the version of themselves that exists underneath all the walls and wounds. And you think, that's who they really are. That's the person I'm connecting with. That's the person I'm building with. If I could just help them become that person consistently, we'll have something incredible. So you invest. You're not in who they are right now, the emotional unavailable person with unresolved issues who's clearly not ready, but in who they could become, the healed version, the available version, the version that exists in your imagination. And here's the trap: that version doesn't exist yet. And to be honest, it might never exist, because potential means nothing without action. Think about Summer Walker's pattern. With every man she's been with publicly, you can see this dynamic play out. She's not staying because they're treating her well right now. She's staying because she sees who they could be. She sees the potential. She sees, she believes in the version of them that could exist if they just healed, if they just grew, if they just became emotionally available. And she invests in that potential. She gives her energy, her time, her emotional labor to just trying to help them become that version. But they don't become that version, because potential, again, without action, is just a fantasy. And she's exhausting herself trying to love someone into a version of themselves they haven't committed to becoming, that they haven't committed to becoming. And this is what makes the I can fix him or her delusion so painful. So painful is that you're not in a relationship with a real person. You're in a relationship with potential, possibility, with a fantasy of who they could actually be. And that fantasy, that fantasy keeps you invested in, even when the reality is hurting you. That fantasy keeps you invested, because every time they show up or show you just a glimpse of that potential, every time they're vulnerable for a moment, every time they say they're going to change, every time they have a good day, you think, see, that's who they really are. That's the person I knew was there. If I could just stay patient, if I could just keep supporting them, they'll become that person consistently. But they don't, because those glimpses aren't who they are. They're who they could be. There's a difference there. And there's a massive, massive difference there between the two. Who they are right now is someone who's emotionally unavailable. And that's just what it is. It's who's not doing the work. Emotionally unavailable, who's not doing the work, who's not ready for what you're offering, who's giving you crumbs while you're giving them everything, who they could be. Who they could be is the healed version. the available version, the version that shows up consistently, treats you well, matches your energy, and you're staying for the could be while suffering through the is. Think about your own patterns. How many times have you stayed with someone not because of how they were treating you, but because of how you believe they could treat you if they just healed? How many times have you seen red flags but stayed anyway because you saw potential underneath those flags? How many times have you invested months or years into someone, waiting for them to become the person you knew they could be, while they stayed exactly who they were when you met them? And if you're honest, you might recognize that you've been dating potential, not reality, that you've been in love with a fantasy. We're all guilty of it, again, at some point in our life. But you've been in love with a fantasy, not a person. That you've been exhausting yourself trying to help someone become something they haven't committed to becoming. And that's the painful truth. Here's the other painful truth. They might never become that person. Not because they can't, but because they're not doing the work to actually get there. Potential without action is meaningless. Possibility without commitment is just a fantasy. Someone can help or can have all the potential in the world to be an incredible partner. They can have all the qualities underneath their wounds. They can, have glimpses of emotional availability. But if they're not actively working on themselves, if they're not in therapy, not addressing their trauma, not taking responsibility for their patterns, not doing the actual work of healing, that potential will never become a reality. And you can't do the work for them. You can't love them into healing. You can't be patient enough, supportive enough, understanding enough to make them actually choose growth. They have to choose it themselves. And if they're not choosing it, you're wasting your energy trying to love them into a version of themselves they're just not committed to becoming. Think about, again, Summer Walker's exhaustion in her posts. The constant heartbreak, the pattern of giving everything and getting nothing back. And it's not because she's not enough. It's not because her love isn't real. It's because she's been trying to love men into healing who aren't doing the work to heal themselves. Dating potential instead of their reality. And potential doesn't keep you warm at night. Potential doesn't show up consistently. Potential doesn't give you the partnership you deserve. Only reality does. And if the reality is that they're not ready, they're not available, not doing the work, then no amount of seeing their potential will change that. And this is why the I can fix him or her delusion is so exhausting. You're constantly investing in a future version of someone that might never exist, while the current version is hurting you, disappointing you, leaving your needs unmet. You're in a relationship with potential, not a person, and potential can't love you back. So here's what you need to understand. Seeing someone's potential is not the same as being in a relationship with them. Believing who they could become is not the same as being with who they are. Hoping they'll heal is not the same as being with someone who's actively healing. You can see someone's potential and still walk away. You can believe they could be incredible and still recognize that for right now, they're not. You can hope they heal and still refuse to exhaust yourself waiting for them to choose that healing, because here's the truth. You're not dating who they could be. You're dating who they are right now. And if who they are right now isn't treating you well, isn't meeting your needs, isn't doing the work, then their potential is irrelevant. Stop falling in love with potential. I know it's easier said than done, but straight shooter. Stop falling in love with potential. Stop staying for who they could become. Stop exhausting yourself trying to help someone become a version of themselves they haven't committed to becoming. Date reality. Stay for who they are right now, not who you hope they'll become. And if who they are right now isn't enough, if they're not ready, not available, not doing the work, then walk away. Their potential is not your responsibility. Their healing is not your project. Their growth is not your job. You're looking for a partner, not a project. And if you're spending more energy trying to fix them, then you're experiencing a partnership with them. You're not in a relationship. You're in a rehabilitation center. And this is the first truth. You're not attracted to who they are. You're attracted to who you believe they could become. And that attraction to potential keeps you invested, of course, in a fantasy, while the reality exhausts you, disappoints you, and breaks your heart over and over again.